Maya stood in the marble kitchen, her hands trembling as she served drinks to strangers laughing in her living room. A fresh bruise darkened her cheek. This wasn't supposed to be her life. Just 6 months ago, she had envied her best friend Lisa's perfect marriage to David, the successful architect. She had wanted it so badly that she went to a spiritual worker, cast a binding spell, and took Lisa's place. But the spell didn't bring love. It brought a nightmare she could never escape. The herbalist's warning echoed in her mind. Once the charm is cast, you're bound to him forever, even if he destroys you. Now, as David pulled another woman into the bedroom while guests watched, Maya realized the terrible truth. She hadn't stolen Lisa's blessing. She had stolen Lisa's prison, and there was no way out. Back-end index pointing right. If you're enjoying this story, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a chapter. Share this with someone who needs to hear this message. Let's reach 10K subscribers together. Comment below. Have you ever envied someone's life without knowing their truth? Maya and Lisa grew up in the bustling neighborhood of Riverside, Chicago, where old brick buildings stood shoulder to shoulder and children played in small courtyards behind chain-link fences. They met in first grade, sitting next to each other in Ms. Johnson's classroom, and from that day forward, they were inseparable. Maya was the quiet one, thoughtful and careful, always considering her words before speaking. She preferred books to crowds and found comfort in routine. Lisa was her opposite, bold, energetic, full of dreams that stretched far beyond their modest neighborhood. She talked about mansions and luxury cars, about traveling the world and living a life of glamour. But despite their differences, they moved through life like two halves of the same person. Their mothers often joked that they should have been twins. If you saw one girl walking to school, the other was never far behind. When Maya struggled with math, Lisa stayed up late helping her study. When Lisa got into trouble for talking back to a teacher, Maya defended her without hesitation. They shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams, and fears. As teenagers, they would lie on Lisa's bed under the slowly spinning ceiling fan, talking about the future. Maya's dreams were simple and sweet. She wanted to own a small bakery, have a cozy home, and marry someone who loved her genuinely. Lisa wanted everything bigger: a mansion with a pool, designer clothes, a wealthy husband, vacations in Europe. But even as their dreams diverged, their friendship remained solid as stone. "We'll always be sisters," Lisa would say, squeezing Maya's hand. "No matter what happens, we'll always have each other." Maya believed her completely. College brought new chapters, but didn't separate them. They attended the same university, shared an apartment, and navigated young adulthood together. Maya studied culinary arts while Lisa pursued marketing. Maya worked part-time at a catering company to pay her bills, and that's where everything changed. She was delivering pastries to a corporate event downtown when she met David. He was tall, well-dressed, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He complimented her desserts, then struck up a conversation. Before she knew it, they were exchanging phone numbers. David was everything Maya had quietly hoped for. He was a successful architect, running his own firm, but he wasn't arrogant about it. He was thoughtful and attentive, showing up at her apartment with coffee before early classes, helping her carry heavy equipment to catering jobs, and listening intently when she talked about her dreams of opening a bakery. "You're going to be amazing," he would tell her, his eyes full of genuine belief. Maya fell in love slowly and completely. For the first time in her life, she felt chosen, special, seen. When she introduced David to Lisa, her best friend squealed with excitement and pulled her into a tight hug. "Finally, you deserve this so much." Lisa seemed genuinely happy, and Maya had no reason to doubt her. They all spent time together, going to dinners and movies, and Lisa appeared to love David like the brother she never had. After graduation, David proposed. He took Maya to a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Chicago skyline, got down on one knee, and offered her a beautiful diamond ring. Maya cried tears of joy and said yes without hesitation. The wedding was everything she'd dreamed of: elegant, intimate, filled with love. Lisa stood beside her as maid of honor, smiling brightly in her lavender dress. Helping with the veil, making sure everything was perfect. The ceremony was held in a historic venue with high ceilings and crystal chandeliers. Guests whispered about how beautiful it all was, how lucky Maya was, how perfect the couple seemed. Lisa smiled through it all, but something had already begun to shift inside her. Something small and dark that she tried to ignore. After the wedding, Maya moved into David's stunning home, a modern three-story house in an upscale neighborhood with floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, and a garage that housed 2 luxury cars. When Lisa visited for the first time, she stood in the foyer, speechless. Maya gave her a tour, excited to share her new life. The gourmet kitchen, the master suite, the walk-in closet filled with beautiful clothes. Lisa smiled and hugged her friend, but inside, jealousy had planted its first seed. This should have been mine, she thought, then immediately felt guilty for thinking it. But the thought didn't go away. It grew. For the first few months, Maya truly believed she was living a fairy tale. David was attentive and loving, bringing her flowers for no reason, cooking breakfast on weekends, and supporting her plans to eventually open her bakery. They talked about the future, about children, about growing old together. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. It started with late nights at the office. David would text saying he had an important deadline, that he'd be home late. Maya would wait up, keeping dinner warm, watching the clock tick past midnight. When he finally arrived, he'd smell of alcohol and cigarettes, his eyes glazed and distant. "Where were you?" she'd ask gently, not wanting to sound accusatory. "Working," he'd snap. "Why are you interrogating me?" His tone shocked her. This wasn't the man she'd married. But the next morning, he'd apologize, kiss her forehead, and everything would seem normal again. Maya convinced herself it was just stress from his business. Then came the first time he raised his hand to her. She had asked him about a charge on their credit card, an expensive dinner at a restaurant she'd never been to. It was an innocent question, but David's face transformed. His jaw clenched, his eyes went cold, and before she could process what was happening, his palm connected with her cheek. The slap echoed through their beautiful home. Maya stood frozen, her hand on her burning face, unable to believe what had just happened. David stared at his own hand, as if it belonged to someone else. Then his expression crumbled. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. You pushed me. You know I hate being questioned." He pulled her into his arms, kissing her hair, whispering apologies. "I'll never do it again. I promise. I love you so much." The next day, he came home with a designer handbag and a pair of diamond earrings. "Forgive me," he pleaded. And because Maya loved him, because she didn't want to believe her marriage was broken, she forgave him. But it happened again, and again. A pattern emerged. He would stay out late, come home angry, find something to criticize, and then his temper would explode. Sometimes he'd slap her. Sometimes he'd grab her arms so hard they bruised. Once, he shoved her into the wall, and she hit her head hard enough to see stars. Each time, he'd apologize. Each time, he'd buy her something expensive. A new watch, a vacation, a car. As if money could erase the fear growing inside her. Maya learned to hide it all. She wore long sleeves to cover the bruises on her arms. She applied makeup carefully to conceal the marks on her face. She posted happy photos on social media, smiling beside David at restaurants and events, perpetuating the illusion of a perfect marriage. No one knew the truth. Not her mother, not her coworkers, and especially not Lisa. Lisa visited often, and each time, Maya put on her best performance. She'd greet her friend with a bright smile, offer her tea in the pristine living room, and chat about mundane things while David played the role of the perfect husband. "Honey, can I get you anything?" he'd ask Maya sweetly, as if he hadn't thrown a plate at her the night before. Lisa would watch them with admiration in her eyes. "You two are so perfect together. I'm so happy for you, Maya." Maya would smile and nod, swallowing the truth that wanted to claw its way out of her throat. Lisa didn't see the reality. She saw the mansion, the cars, the jewelry, the luxury vacations. She saw what Maya wanted her to see: success, security, happiness. And the more Lisa visited, the more her admiration began to curdle into something darker. Why does she have everything? Lisa would think on her way home to her small apartment. She doesn't even seem that happy. If I had a husband like David, I would appreciate him. I will make it work. Lisa started comparing her own life to Maya's, and it always came up short. She worked 2 jobs to make rent. Her dating life was a series of disappointments. She had no car, no savings, no stability. Meanwhile, Maya had everything handed to her. It didn't seem fair. Lisa began to dress more carefully when visiting, wearing fitted dresses and subtle perfume. She laughed louder at David's jokes, touched his arm when talking to him, complimented him constantly. "David, you're so talented. Maya is so lucky." Maya didn't notice the undertone. She was too focused on surviving her marriage. But David noticed Lisa's attention, and he smirked. Lisa couldn't sleep anymore. Every night, she lay in her small bed in her cramped apartment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, thinking about Maya's life. The marble floors, the chandeliers, the luxury cars, the powerful husband who provided everything. It consumed her. During the day, she scrolled through Maya's social media obsessively. Every post felt like a personal attack. Maya in a new designer dress. Maya and David at an expensive restaurant. Maya showing off another gift. A bracelet, a necklace, a handbag that cost more than Lisa's monthly rent. The comments under each post made it worse. "You're so blessed." "Couple goals." "Living the dream." Lisa would stare at those words until her vision blurred with tears of frustration. She worked twice as hard as Maya ever did. She was smarter, more ambitious, more deserving. Yet Maya was the one living in luxury, while Lisa struggled to afford groceries. It wasn't fair. Admiration had long since transformed into resentment. Resentment had grown into envy. And envy was now becoming something much more dangerous, a belief that Maya's life rightfully belonged to her. Lisa started visiting more frequently, always with an excuse. "I was in the neighborhood. I brought you some coffee. I wanted to see how you're doing." But really, she came to study David, to position herself, to plant seeds. She began dressing like Maya, copying her style, her mannerisms, even her way of speaking. She wore the same perfume, styled her hair similarly, laughed the same soft laugh. It was subtle, but deliberate. When David was home, Lisa made sure to be helpful. She'd offer to help Maya in the kitchen, then linger to chat with David. She'd ask him about his work, his projects, his interests, hanging on every word as if he were the most fascinating person alive. "You're so brilliant, David. How do you manage such complex projects? Maya is so lucky to have such a hard-working husband. If I ever get married, I hope my husband is half as successful as you." David would smile politely, but he didn't take the bait. He wasn't interested in Lisa. He barely noticed her attempts at flirtation. And that rejection cut Lisa deeper than she expected. She had convinced herself that she was better than Maya, that David would naturally be drawn to her if only he paid attention. But he didn't. He remained focused on Maya, despite how terribly he treated her behind closed doors. One evening, after another visit where David barely acknowledged her presence, Lisa walked home in the rain. Jealousy transformed into something cold and calculated. If she couldn't win David through normal means, she would need to force destiny's hand. She had heard whispers about a spiritual worker on the south side of the city, a man who performed rituals that could change a person's fate. People spoke about him in hushed tones. He could make someone fall in love, break up marriages, bind 2 people together forever. Lisa had always dismissed such things as superstition. But desperation makes believers out of skeptics. She spent days gathering the courage, battling with her conscience, trying to convince herself that what she was considering wasn't truly evil. She told herself that Maya didn't appreciate what she had, that David deserved someone who would worship him, that she was actually doing everyone a favor. Finally, on a cold Thursday evening, Lisa took 2 buses to a neighborhood she'd never been to before. The spiritual worker operated out of a small storefront with blackened windows and a red door. A handwritten sign read, "Solutions for Life's Problems." Her hands shook as she pushed the door open. Inside, the air was thick with incense. Candles flickered on shelves lined with bottles, herbs, and strange objects Lisa couldn't identify. An old man sat behind a wooden table, his eyes sharp and knowing despite his age. "Why have you come?" he asked before Lisa could speak. She swallowed hard. "I need help with a situation." The man gestured for her to sit. Lisa perched on the edge of a wooden chair, her heart pounding so loud she was sure he could hear it. "I want someone," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A man. He's married to my friend, but he should be with me. I wanted to leave her and love only me." The spiritual worker studied her face for a long moment, and Lisa felt exposed, as if he could see every ugly thought she'd ever had. "This is dark work," he said slowly. "When you bind someone to you through spiritual means, you bind their destiny to yours completely. Good and bad, light and dark. If he is violent, you will receive his violence. If he is kind, you will receive his kindness. But you cannot choose which parts you get." Lisa's heart raced, but her desire was stronger than her fear. "Understand," she lied. The spiritual worker watched Lisa carefully, his weathered face unreadable. "Are you certain about this path? Once begun, it cannot be undone." Lisa nodded, though uncertainty flickered in her chest like a dying candle. "Yes, I'm certain." The old man sighed deeply, as if he'd heard these same words 1,000 times before, always from people who didn't understand what they were truly asking for. He stood slowly and moved to a shelf, gathering items. Red and black thread, small bones, dried herbs, a piece of parchment. "I will need his full name, date of birth if you know it, and something that belongs to him." Lisa pulled out her phone, showing him David's information that she'd carefully researched. For the object, she reached into her purse and produced a pen that David had left on Maya's coffee table during one of her visits. She'd pocketed it weeks ago, not yet knowing why, just feeling compelled to take something of his. The spiritual worker nodded. "This will work." He prepared the ritual with methodical precision. He wrote David's name on the parchment in red ink, wound the red and black threads around the pen, and placed everything inside a small clay pot. Then he added the herbs, speaking words in a language Lisa didn't recognize. The air grew heavy, pressing down our chest. As he chanted, Lisa felt something shift in the room. The candles flickered, though there was no breeze. The temperature dropped. Her skin prickled with goosebumps, and for the first time, real fear cut through her jealousy. "What am I doing?" she thought, but she said nothing, frozen in her seat. The spiritual worker tied the pot closed with more thread, making intricate knots as he continued his chant. When he finished, he looked at Lisa with eyes that seemed to see into her future. "This must be thrown into the river tonight, at midnight exactly. Once it touches the water, the binding is permanent. He will be drawn to you, unable to resist. But understand this clearly, you will be bound to him as well. If you try to leave him, your heart will stop. If he dies, you will follow soon after. Your fates are now intertwined until death separates you." Lisa's mouth went dry. "But he'll love me, right? That's what the spell does." The old man shook his head slowly. "The spell binds you together. It does not create love. It creates dependency, obsession, connection. Whatever he is, whatever darkness he carries, you will inherit it. Love cannot be forced, child. Only chains can." For a moment, Lisa considered standing up and walking away. The reasonable part of her mind screamed warnings. But the jealous part, the part that had grown strong and loud over months of envy, drowned out the warnings. She took the pot from his hands. "I understand." "No," the spiritual worker said sadly. "But you will." That night, Lisa drove to the bridge over the Chicago River. She parked her car and walked to the middle of the bridge, the clay pot heavy in her hands, her breath creating clouds in the cold air. The city lights reflected off the dark water below, and she felt utterly alone. Her phone showed 11:58 p.m. She thought about Maya, her best friend since childhood. She thought about the years of friendship, the shared secrets, the promises they'd made to always be there for each other. Guilt stabbed at her heart. But then she thought about Maya's mansion, her cars, her jewelry, her seemingly perfect life. She thought about David's smile, his success, his power. She thought about her own empty apartment and emptier future. The clock struck midnight. Lisa threw the pot into the river. It hit the water with a soft splash and disappeared into the darkness. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Lisa felt it, a pulling sensation in her chest, as if an invisible thread had attached itself to her heart and was drawing tight. She gasped, clutching her chest. The feeling intensified for several seconds, then settled into a constant, subtle pressure, like wearing a collar she couldn't see. "It's done," she whispered to the empty night. Lisa drove home in a daze, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. Part of her expected to feel triumphant, victorious, excited. Instead, she felt hollow, as if she'd traded something essential for something poisonous. But it was too late for regrets now. The spell had been cast. The pot had been thrown. The binding was complete. And somewhere across the city, in his beautiful home, David suddenly felt restless, irritable, unable to explain why thoughts of Lisa had begun to creep into his mind uninvited, unwanted, but insistent. The curse was working, and Maya, sleeping fitfully beside her husband, had no idea that her entire world was about to shatter. The change in David happened within days, swift and inexplicable. Maya first noticed it at breakfast. David sat across from her, staring at his coffee with an expression of disgust, though nothing was wrong with it. When she asked if he wanted something different, he stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. "I can't stand being here," he muttered, leaving his food untouched. Maya was confused but not yet alarmed. David had mood swings before. She cleaned up breakfast, applied extra concealer to the bruise on her arm from 2 nights ago, and went about her day. But David's behavior grew stranger. He stopped coming to bed at night. He paced the house at odd hours. He became even more irritable than usual, snapping at Maya for breathing too loudly, for asking simple questions, for existing in his space. "Why are you always here?" he shouted one evening. "Don't you have somewhere else to be?" "David, this is my home," Maya said quietly, fear creeping in her voice. "It's my house," he corrected coldly. "I paid for it. I own it. You're just here because I allow it." The words cut deeper than any physical blow. Maya retreated to the bedroom, tears streaming down her face, wondering what she had done to make him hate her so suddenly. What she didn't know was that David couldn't stop thinking about Lisa. Her face appeared in his mind at random moments. He found himself checking his phone, hoping she'd texted. He felt an irrational pull to see her, to be near her, though he didn't understand why. He'd never been attracted to her before, but now he felt obsessed, as if his thoughts weren't fully his own. It scared him, and he took his fear out on Maya. One morning, without warning or explanation, David told Maya to leave. She was in the kitchen making tea when he appeared in the doorway, his face set and cold. "Pack your things. Get out of my house." Maya dropped her mug. It shattered on the marble floor. "What? David, what are you talking about? I want you gone. Today. Now." "But why? What did I do?" Her voice broke, tears already forming. "You exist," he said flatly. "That's enough. Get out." He didn't yell. He didn't hit her. His calm, cold delivery was somehow worse. Maya stood among the broken pieces of her mug, her marriage, her life, unable to comprehend what was happening. When she didn't move fast enough, David grabbed her suitcase from the closet and began throwing her clothes into it randomly. He dragged it to the front door and set it outside, then looked at her expectantly. "David, please," Maya begged. "Let's talk about this. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix. I don't want you here anymore. Simple." He practically pushed her out the door and closed in her face. Maya stood on the porch of what had been her home, humiliated and heartbroken, with nowhere to go. She called her mother, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. Her mother came to pick her up, asking questions Maya couldn't answer because she didn't understand what had happened. How could she explain that her husband had just stopped wanting her, that he'd thrown her out like trash? Maya moved into her mother's small house in their old neighborhood, the same area she and Lisa had grown up in. She felt like a failure. All the beautiful photos, the perfect facade, the illusion of happiness, it had all come crashing down. Meanwhile, David sat in his empty mansion, feeling the pull in his chest grow stronger. He needed to see Lisa. The thought consumed him. He picked up his phone and, as if his hands were controlled by someone else, he texted her. "Come over." Lisa received the message while at work. Her heart raced. The spell was working. She'd been waiting for this moment, checking her phone obsessively for days. She didn't question why David was suddenly reaching out. She didn't wonder where Maya was. She only felt triumph. She left work early, went home to change in her best dress, applied makeup carefully, and drove to David's house. Her house now, she told herself. When David opened the door, his eyes were different. Dark, intense, almost glazed. He looked at Lisa the way she'd always wanted him to look at her, with need, with desire, with obsession. But there was no warmth in his gaze, only hunger. "Come in," he said, and Lisa, foolish and desperate, stepped through the door into her new life, not realizing she was actually stepping into her own grave. Lisa walked into David's mansion with her head held high, feeling like a queen finally claiming her throne. Everything she'd envied for months was now within her reach. The marble floors gleamed under her feet. The chandeliers sparkled above her. This was supposed to be her moment of triumph. But something felt wrong. David stood in the foyer, watching her with an expression that wasn't quite right. His eyes held an intensity that made her skin prickle, not with excitement, but with unease. Still, she pushed the feeling aside and smiled. "David, I'm so glad you called me. I've been worried about you." He didn't return her smile. "Where's Maya?" I don't know. Isn't she here?" "I made her leave," he said flatly. "She was in the way." Lisa's heart skipped. "Oh, well, maybe it's for the best." You two didn't seem happy. David moved closer, and Lisa instinctively took a step back. There was something predatory in his movement. "You wanted to be here, didn't you? You wanted this life." Yes. I care about you, David. I have for a long time." "Good," he said. "Because you're not leaving." The words should have sounded romantic, possessive in an exciting way. But they didn't. They sounded like a threat. Within a week, David married Lisa in a quick courthouse ceremony with no guests, no celebration, no joy. Just paperwork that bound them legally. Lisa moved into the mansion completely, bringing her few belongings into the home she'd dreamed about. For the first day, she walked through the rooms in wonder, touching the expensive furniture, trying on the clothes Maya had left behind, imagining herself as the new Mrs. David Mercer. She posted a carefully crafted photo on social media, her hand with a wedding ring, captioned simply, "New Beginnings." But the dream shattered before the sun set. That evening, Lisa asked David for the Wi-Fi password so she could set up her phone. It was an innocent request. His response was not. He grabbed her phone and smashed it against the wall. The screen exploded into spiderweb cracks, pieces of glass falling to the floor. Lisa stood frozen in shock. "Don't question me," David said coldly. "Don't ask me for anything." "David, I just wanted—" The slap came so fast she didn't see it. Her head snapped to the side, pain exploding across her cheek. She touched her face in disbelief, tears immediately springing to her eyes. "That's for talking back," he said. When she began to cry, he hit her again, harder. "And that's for crying." Lisa crumpled to the floor, sobbing, holding her bruised face. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. The spell was supposed to make him love her. But there was no love in his eyes, only cold, dark rage. That was the first beating. It would not be the last. Over the following weeks, David's abuse became routine. He hit her for speaking, for asking questions, for breathing too loudly. He slapped her in the morning if his breakfast wasn't perfect. He punched her in the evening if she looked at him wrong. He shoved her into walls, grabbed her by the hair, and once dragged her across the floor because she'd forgotten to lock the front door. There were no apologies afterward, no expensive gifts, no tears or promises to change, just silence and cold indifference. Lisa quickly learned the rules. Stay quiet, stay out of his way, anticipate his needs before he voiced them, and above all, never, ever try to leave. She tried once. After a particularly brutal beating that left her ribs aching, she packed a bag and headed for the door. But the moment her hand touched the doorknob, searing pain shot through her chest. It felt like someone was squeezing her heart, crushing it. She collapsed on the floor, gasping, unable to breathe. The spiritual worker's warning echoed in her mind. If you try to leave him, your heart will stop. She crawled back inside, the pain immediately releasing its grip. She sat on the floor, crying, realizing the full horror of what she'd done to herself. She was trapped, permanently, irrevocably. The spell had bound her to David completely, but it hadn't bound him to treat her with any kindness. One afternoon, David brought friends over. Lisa was bruised and exhausted, wearing sunglasses inside to hide a black eye. David's friends drank and laughed loudly while Lisa served them food and drinks with shaking hands. One of David's friends leaned over and whispered, "Is that your new wife? What happened to the other one?" David shrugged. "She wasn't working out. This one's better." But his eyes, when they landed on Lisa, held nothing but contempt. Lisa carried a tray of glasses, tears sliding down her face, trapped in a nightmare of her own making. Lisa lived in a state of constant terror. Every footstep, every door opening, every sound David made sent adrenaline coursing through her body. She learned to read his moods from the way he walked, the tone of his voice, the tension in his shoulders. She tried everything to please him. She cooked his favorite meals, kept the house spotless, stayed silent unless spoken to. Nothing worked. David's rage was unpredictable and constant, a storm that never passed. The physical abuse was terrible, but the psychological torture was worse. David would bring other women home, right in front of Lisa. He'd flirt with them, laugh with them, sometimes disappear into the bedroom with them while Lisa cleaned the kitchen, crying silently. "You're nothing," he'd tell her casually, as if commenting on the weather. "You're here because you have no choice. But you're nothing to me." Lisa's spirit broke piece by piece. The confident, ambitious woman who'd envied Maya's life was gone, replaced by a hollow shell who flinched at shadows. One evening, David hosted a party. The house filled with loud music, alcohol, and people Lisa didn't know. David told her to serve everyone, to play hostess. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, her face covered in makeup that barely concealed the bruises. People stared at her. Some whispered. Nobody helped. At one point, Lisa accidentally dropped a wine glass. It shattered on a marble floor, red wine spreading like blood. The room went quiet. David stood up slowly, his face darkening. He walked over to her, and in front of everyone, he slapped her so hard she fell to her knees. The guests gasped, but no one moved to help. No one called the police. They just watched. "Clean it up," David said, stepping over her like she was trash. Lisa knelt on the floor, picking up glass with shaking hands, blood mixing with wine as the shards cut her fingers. She felt utterly alone, utterly hopeless. Later that night, after the guests had left and David had passed out drunk on the couch, Lisa sat in the bathroom, looking at her reflection in the mirror. She didn't recognize herself. Her face was swollen and bruised. Her eyes were dead. She had become exactly what she'd once pitied. No worse, because Maya had been innocent. Lisa had chosen this. The weight of her guilt crashed over her. She thought about Maya, her best friend since childhood, the girl who'd never done anything but love her. She'd betrayed her, stolen her husband, destroyed their friendship, all because of jealousy. And for what? For this nightmare? Lisa knew she needed to try to fix something, anything. She couldn't undo the spell. The spiritual worker had been clear about that. But maybe she could apologize. Maybe she could at least confess the truth and ask for forgiveness. The next morning, while David was still sleeping, Lisa slipped out of the house. The pain in her chest started immediately, but it wasn't strong enough to stop her yet. She had maybe an hour before the spell would pull her back. She took a bus to Riverside, to the old neighborhood where she and Maya had grown up. Her body ached with every bump in the road. Her ribs hurt. Her face throbbed. But she kept going. She found Maya's mother's house and knocked on the door. When no one answered, she asked a neighbor where Maya might be. The neighbor gave her an address for a small apartment nearby. Lisa walked there slowly, each step heavier than the last. The pain in her chest was growing, warning her that she was running out of time. Finally, she reached a modest building and climbed the stairs to the second floor. She knocked on the door, her hand trembling. "Maya," she called out weakly. "Please, It's me. The door opened, and there stood Maya. She looked different, thinner, but there was something else too. A strength in her eyes that hadn't been there before. A peace. Maya stared at Lisa in shock, taking in the bruised face, the bandaged arms, the broken spirit of the woman before her. Lisa collapsed to her knees right there in the hallway. Maya, please forgive me. Please. Maya stood frozen in her doorway, staring at the woman kneeling before her. For a moment, she couldn't process what she was seeing. Lisa, her childhood best friend, looked destroyed. Her face was swollen and bruised, her arms wrapped in bandages, her eyes hollow with suffering. Lisa, Maya whispered, "What happened to you?" Lisa sobbed, unable to hold back the flood of tears. "I did this to myself. I destroyed everything. I destroyed us." Maya helped her stand and guided her inside the small apartment. It was nothing like the mansion, just a modest one-bedroom with simple furniture, but it was clean and peaceful. Maya had been rebuilding her life slowly, focusing on her catering business, healing from the trauma of her marriage. Lisa sat on the couch, her whole body shaking. Maya brought her water and waited, her heart pounding with questions and fear. "Maya, I need to tell you everything," Lisa began, her voice breaking. "I need you to know what I did." Over the next hour, Lisa confessed it all. The jealousy that had consumed her, the visits to the spiritual worker, the binding spell she'd cast to take David away, the curse that now trapped her forever. She described the beatings, the humiliation, the complete nightmare her life had become. "I wanted your life so badly," Lisa cried. "I thought you had everything. I thought you were happy. I didn't know David was hurting you. I didn't know you were suffering too." Maya sat in stunned silence, processing the betrayal. Her best friend, her sister by choice, had deliberately destroyed her marriage through dark magic. The anger rose in her chest, hot and righteous. "You did this with a spell?" Maya finally said, her voice tight. "You used spiritual manipulation to steal my husband?" "Yes," Lisa whispered, shame flooding her face. "And now I can't escape. The spiritual worker warned me. He said the spell binds me to David forever. If I try to leave, my heart will stop. I'm trapped until one of us dies." Maya stood up, pacing the small room. She thought about all the years of friendship, all the secrets shared, all the promises made. She thought about how she'd trusted Lisa completely, never suspecting that envy was growing into something poisonous. "I told you everything," Maya said, her voice rising. "I shared my life with you. And while I was suffering, while David was beating me, you were plotting to take my place." "I didn't know he was beating you," Lisa cried. "You hid it so well. I only saw the mansion, the cars, the luxury. I thought you had a perfect life. So you decided to steal it?" Maya's voice broke. "Without even asking me how I was? Without caring about what it would do to our friendship?" Lisa had no defense. She simply sobbed, her face in her hands. Maya felt tears sliding down her own cheeks. This hurt worse than anything David had ever done to her, because David was supposed to be a stranger who became family. Lisa was family who became a stranger. For several long minutes, the only sound was Lisa's crying. Finally, Maya spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "Lisa, I forgive you." Lisa's head snapped up, shock in her eyes. "What? I forgive you," Maya repeated. "Not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. You betrayed me in the worst way possible. You used evil to destroy my life. But I forgive you because holding on to this anger will only poison me the way jealousy poisoned you." Lisa cried harder, overwhelmed by the grace she didn't deserve. "But," Maya continued, and her voice became stronger, "we can never be friends again." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "You broke something that can't be repaired," Maya explained. "Trust, loyalty, sisterhood, you destroyed all of it. I can forgive you and release you from my anger, but I can't pretend this didn't happen. I can't go back to how we were." Lisa nodded through her tears, understanding. This was more mercy than she deserved. "You need to leave now," Maya said gently but firmly. "Go back before the spell hurts you. But know this, I don't hate you. I pity you. Because you traded our friendship for a prison, and now you have to live in it." Lisa stood on shaking legs. She wanted to hug Maya, to hold on to their friendship one last time, but she knew she'd lost that right. "I'm sorry," she whispered one final time. "I know," Maya replied, "but sorry doesn't fix this." Lisa walked to the door and paused, looking back at the only true friend she'd ever had. Then she stepped out into the hallway, the door closing softly behind her, marking the end of a friendship that had lasted their entire lives. Lisa walked back to David's mansion in a daze, her body aching, her heart shattered. The conversation with Maya played over and over in her mind. "I forgive you, but we can never be friends again." It was the right decision, Lisa knew that, but it hurt more than any of David's beatings. She had lost the one person who ever truly loved her, and it was entirely her own fault. As she approached the house, dread settled in her stomach like a stone. The pain in her chest had been pulling at her the entire journey, reminding her that she was tethered to this place, to this man, to this nightmare. She opened the front door quietly, hoping David was still asleep or had gone out. But he was in the living room, awake and waiting. "Where were you?" His voice was dangerously calm. I just went for a walk." "You left without permission." He stood up slowly. "You think you could just come and go as you please?" "No, He backhanded her before she could finish. Lisa fell against the wall, tasting blood. "Don't ever leave this house without telling me," David said. "You belong to me. Do you understand?" Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her face. That night marked a new level of horror. David decided to throw another party, a bigger one this time. He invited dozens of people, friends and strangers alike. The house filled with loud music, alcohol, and chaos. David ordered Lisa to serve everyone. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, carrying trays of food and drinks, her bruised face visible to everyone. Some people stared. Some whispered. Most pretended not to notice. David openly flirted with other women right in front of her. He danced with them, kissed them, made it clear that Lisa meant nothing to him. When one particularly beautiful woman arrived, David pulled her close and announced loudly, "This is what a real woman looks like. Not like this pathetic thing I'm stuck with." The guests laughed uncomfortably. Lisa stood there holding a tray, humiliation burning through her worse than any physical pain. Later in the evening, David disappeared into the bedroom with two different women, leaving the door wide open so Lisa could hear everything. She stood in the hallway, frozen, tears sliding down her face. One of the guests, a woman about Lisa's age, approached her carefully. "Are you okay? Do you need help? We can call someone." For a moment, hope flickered in Lisa's chest. But then she remembered the spell, the binding, the consequences. She couldn't leave. Even if this kind woman called the police, even if they took her away, the spell would kill her. "I'm fine," Lisa whispered. "Please, just leave me alone." The woman looked sad but walked away, and Lisa felt the last possibility of rescue disappear. When the party finally ended in the early morning hours, the house was destroyed. Broken bottles, spilled drinks, trash everywhere. David looked at the mess, then looked at Lisa. "Clean this up," he commanded. "All of it. I want this house spotless by the time I wake up." He went upstairs, leaving Lisa alone with hours of work ahead of her. She moved mechanically, picking up trash, mopping floors, crying silently as dawn broke through the windows. This had become her life. She was no longer a wife, no longer a person. She was a servant, a prisoner, a cautionary tale about the dangers of jealousy. As she cleaned, Lisa thought about the woman she used to be. Ambitious, confident, full of dreams. She thought about her friendship with Maya, the innocent days of childhood, the promises they'd made to always be there for each other. She had thrown it all away for this. For a mansion that felt like a tomb. For a husband who treated her like garbage. For a life that looked perfect from the outside, but was rotting from within. The spiritual worker's words echoed in her mind. "You will be bound to him until death separates you." Death. It was the only way out. But Lisa wasn't brave enough to choose it, and the spell wouldn't allow her to escape naturally. She was truly trapped, living a fate worse than death. A life without hope, without love, without freedom. As the sun rose over Chicago, Lisa finished cleaning and sat on the pristine floor, exhausted and empty. She thought about Maya, probably waking up in her small apartment, free and at peace. And for the first time, Lisa understood the truth Maya had discovered long ago. Luxury means nothing without peace. A mansion is just a prison with nicer walls. And sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find yourself. But for Lisa, that realization came too late. Months passed, and Lisa's life continued in its bleak pattern. Wake up, serve David, endure his abuse, go to sleep, repeat. She stopped looking in mirrors because she couldn't bear to see what she'd become. The vibrant woman who once dreamed big dreams was gone, replaced by a hollow shell that moved through each day on autopilot. David's cruelty never lessened. If anything, it grew worse. He seemed to take pleasure in breaking her spirit completely. He would bring women home regularly, making sure Lisa heard everything. He would beat her for imagined infractions, then laugh at her tears. You wanted this life so badly, he'd taunt her. Are you happy now? Lisa had no answer. She had no fight left. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya was rebuilding her life in ways that mattered. She'd started small, taking catering orders from her mother's kitchen, then gradually expanded. Word spread about her delicious food and reliable service. Soon, she was catering corporate events, weddings, birthday parties. She saved every penny, working long hours, pushing through the emotional pain of her divorce and betrayal. But unlike Lisa, Maya was free. Free to make choices, free to build a future, free to heal. A year after David threw her out, Maya opened her own small bakery in Riverside. It wasn't fancy, just a modest storefront with a few tables, an oven, and a display case. But it was hers. She named it Second Chances Bakery, a reminder that life can begin again after devastation. The neighborhood embraced her. People who remembered her from childhood came to support her. Her mother helped in the kitchen. Slowly, carefully, Maya built a new life on her own terms. She dated occasionally, but wasn't in a hurry to marry again. She'd learned that peace was more valuable than passion, that being alone was better than being afraid, that true wealth wasn't measured in mansions and cars, but in freedom and dignity. Sometimes, late at night, Maya thought about Lisa. She wondered if her former friend was still alive, still trapped in that horrible situation. Part of her wanted to help, but she knew she couldn't. Lisa had made her choice, and the consequences were hers to bear. Maya had learned to let go. One evening, almost 2 years after everything fell apart, Lisa managed to slip out of the house while David was passed out drunk. The pain in her chest warned her she couldn't go far, couldn't stay long, but she needed to see something, anything beyond the walls of her prison. She walked through Riverside, her old neighborhood, moving like a ghost through familiar streets. That's when she saw it, Second Chances Bakery. Through the window, she could see Maya inside, laughing with a customer, her face bright and alive. Lisa stood on the sidewalk, watching the woman who had once been her sister. Maya looked beautiful, not because of expensive clothes or makeup, but because she radiated genuine happiness. She'd lost everything and rebuilt something better. Lisa looked down at her own bruised arms, her shabby clothes, her broken spirit. She had gained everything she thought she wanted and lost everything that actually mattered. The pain in her chest intensified, pulling her back like a leash. She had stayed away too long. Lisa took one last look at the bakery, at Maya's smile, at the life she could have had if only she'd valued what she already possessed. Then she turned and walked back to her prison. That night, as Lisa lay on the floor where David had left her after another beating, she finally understood the full weight of the spiritual worker's warning. The spell hadn't just bound her to David. It had bound her to the consequences of her own jealousy. She would live in this nightmare for the rest of her life, however long that might be. There would be no rescue, no escape, no happy ending. Just endless days of suffering, punishment for the sin of coveting someone else's blessings. Years would pass. David would continue his abuse. Lisa would continue to endure it, trapped by a spell cast in jealousy, bound by consequences she'd invited herself. And Maya would continue to grow, heal, and thrive, a living testament to the truth that freedom and peace are worth more than any material wealth. Two childhood friends, two very different destinies, separated by choices made in a moment of weakness. One learned that losing everything can save you. The other learned that getting everything you want can destroy you. And somewhere in Chicago, in a small storefront bakery, a sign hung in the window. Second Chances Bakery, where every day is a new beginning. Because some people get second chances, and some people don't. The end. Back-end index pointing right. Thank you so much for watching this entire story. If it touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share with others who need to hear this message. We're so close to 10K subscribers, and I couldn't do it without you. Comment below. What's the biggest lesson you learned from this story? Drop your thoughts. And if you want more powerful stories like this, turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. See you in the next story. Remember, never let jealousy rob you of the blessings you already have. Peace is priceless. Love you all. Two hearts.